The executive elevator rose in a glass throat of silence. Ethan Vance adjusted the cuff of his Italian shirt while the floor numbers climbed in clean, indifferent increments. Each soft beep felt like a metronome for a life he could schedule, measure, and control. Beside him, Lily held his hand so tightly her small fingers pressed crescents into his skin. She did not look up. She did not fidget. She did not ask where they were going. 6 years old, blonde hair falling in careful waves, light blue eyes fixed on nothing in particular, she carried her grief like a coat that never came off. Since her mother died 8 months earlier, Lily had moved through days like a quiet shadow. No tantrums, no laughter, no songs. Just obedience, like a child following rules she never agreed to. The doors opened with a crisp ding. The lobby of Vance Industries gleamed with polished marble and mirrored glass. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and citrus cleaner. Shoes clicked in disciplined rhythm. Voices stayed low. People moved with controlled haste, as if even their breathing belonged to the building. Ethan crossed the space with firm steps. Lily hurried to keep up, her backpack bumping softly against her spine. Heads turned. The youngest chief executive in the country did not need to announce himself. His presence did it. On the 20th floor, the lobby was busier. Security scanners emitted quick beeps. A distant printer whirred. Somewhere, a phone vibrated against a desk and stopped. In the center of it all, a cleaning cart rolled over the marble with a slow rasping sound, wheels catching on microscopic seams. A blonde woman was on her knees, scrubbing a stubborn stain. There was nothing remarkable about the work itself. The building had cleaners, floors got dirty, things got wiped and polished and made invisible again. Then she lifted her head and smiled at a security guard passing by. "Good morning, Robert," she said, as if she had all the time in the world. The guard's shoulders loosened. "Better," he replied, slowing down. "My wife's doing better. Thanks, Clara." "That's wonderful. If you need anything, you tell me," she said. It was a simple exchange. But her smile landed like warmth in a place that usually refused it. Her light blue eyes carried an easy, genuine joy that did not match the sterile shine around her. Ethan's gaze narrowed. New, he thought. Too comfortable. Lily tugged his hand and pointed to a bench near the wall. "Daddy, can I sit there?" Her voice was small, but it was a voice. Not a shrug, not a nod, a request. "Of course," Ethan said, guiding her over. He sat her down, then found his attention drifting back to the cleaner as if pulled by a magnet he didn't trust. The woman hummed under her breath while she worked, soft and unbothered. Employees passing through the lobby seemed to glance at her longer than they needed to. Some smiled back. Someone paused to say something. The cleaner answered with the same bright ease. Lily watched, still and silent, but her eyes followed the movement. Curiosity lived there, faint but real. It was the first time in months Ethan had seen Lily interested in anything beyond her own quiet retreat. An idea formed in Ethan's mind, foolish and impulsive, the kind of idea he would usually crush with logic before it ever reached his mouth. He stood. Conversations around the lobby thinned as people noticed him. The hum of the building remained, but the human noise faded, replaced by a hush that carried expectation. Ethan walked to the center of the floor. The cleaner looked up, startled, pushing herself to stand. She wiped her hands on a cloth that smelled of soap and lemon. There was nervousness in her posture, but her eyes held steady, curious rather than frightened. "Good afternoon," Ethan said, his voice clean and sharp. A few employees answered instinctively, almost in chorus. Ethan glanced at the cleaner. "You're new." "Yes, sir," she said quickly. "I started last week. Clara Miller." "Clara," Ethan repeated, testing the sound as if it were a brand name he might acquire. He should have stopped there. He should have walked away, returned to meetings and signatures, and the comforting weight of control. Instead, he lifted his chin slightly and let his exhaustion and desperation steer. "I have an interesting proposal," he said, loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. The silence deepened. A phone that had been buzzing went suddenly still. Someone's coffee cup touched marble with a tiny click. Ethan pointed toward Lily on the bench. "That's my daughter, Lily." Lily looked up. Her face remained composed, but her grip tightened around the strap of her backpack. "She hasn't smiled in a long time," Ethan continued. The words tasted bitter, like admitting failure out loud. If you can make her smile, he paused, letting the building hold its breath with him. I'll marry you. For a moment, no one moved. A few people stared openly. Someone inhaled sharply and forgot to exhale. Across the lobby, Ethan's assistant froze with a folder held halfway to her chest, color draining from her face. Clara blinked once. She didn't laugh. She didn't protest. She didn't ask whether this was a joke, or a trap, or a humiliation wrapped in wealth. She tilted her head, as if weighing the request the way someone weighs a fragile object. All right, she said, calm and clear. I accept. Ethan's eyebrows lifted before he could stop them. He had expected discomfort, flustered excuses, maybe a nervous smile. He had not expected certainty. Clara walked toward Lily without hesitation. She crouched down so they were eye level, her knees pressing into the cold marble as naturally as if she belonged there. Hi, Lily, Clara said gently. I'm Clara. Lily watched her approach with cautious suspicion, like a child who had learned that attention often comes with strings attached. Clara reached into her pocket and pulled out a large, colorful button. It was cheap plastic, scratched around the edges, the kind of thing that could be bought in a handful at a dollar store. She held it out as if it were a treasure. This is a very special magic button, Clara whispered. Lily's lips parted. A sound finally emerged, soft and blunt. Buttons aren't magic. Clara's eyes widened with theatrical seriousness, as if Lily had just issued a royal decree. Ah, Clara murmured. But this one is different. She pressed the button lightly against her own forehead and squeezed her eyes shut. Her face tightened in exaggerated concentration. Her shoulders lifted. She breathed in, as if she were listening to something secret. She said. Let me see. Lily leaned forward despite herself. Her posture shifted from guarded to engaged in a single, quiet inch. Clara opened one eye and lowered her voice. It's working. I can see a story. What story? Lily asked before she could remember not to speak. Clara smiled, slow and bright. A brave princess lived in a castle made of clouds, she began, shaping the air with her hands. She had golden hair like yours and eyes like precious stones. But one day, a rude dragon stole all the colors from her kingdom. Lily's eyes widened. Why? Because nobody ever taught him good manners, Clara said, switching to a gravelly dragon voice that sounded absurd coming from someone so gentle. A small twitch pulled at the corner of Lily's mouth. Not a smile yet, but something trying. And what did the princess do? Lily whispered, leaning closer. Clara's voice softened. She didn't fight. She taught him. She showed him how to be kind. Clara pressed the button again, as if activating the next part. And do you know what happened when the dragon finally learned to smile? Lily shook her head. All the colors came back, Clara said, and then the dragon voice returned, deep and overly dramatic. Thank you, princess. The words hung for a beat. Then something in Lily broke open. A tiny smile appeared, fragile as glass. It trembled, and then a stifled giggle escaped. The giggle turned into a laugh, bright and clear, echoing off marble and glass as if the building itself couldn't believe it. Ethan stood frozen. The sound hit him like a physical blow. He hadn't realized how much he had missed it until it filled the air. Lily laughed again, clutching the cheap button in both hands, as if it were the only real thing in the room. Clara rose to her feet, smoothing her uniform as calmly as if she had simply finished polishing a table. She looked at Ethan and spoke with quiet certainty. Mission accomplished, she said. Ethan stared at her, the weight of his own reckless promise pressing against his ribs. He had offered marriage like a headline, like a prize. Now his daughter's laughter was still ringing, and he couldn't decide which was more terrifying. That it had worked, or that he already knew he would never forget the woman who did it. The laugh stayed in the air long after it left Lily's mouth. People pretended to go back to work, but their movements were off by half a second, like dancers missing a beat. A few employees smiled too widely as they passed, as if they had witnessed something private and weren't sure what to do with it. Someone's heels clicked away faster than usual. A security scanner chirped once, then again, filling the silence that kept trying to return. Ethan didn't move at first. He watched Lily's shoulders rise and fall as she caught her breath, the colorful button clenched in her small hands like a life raft. Her cheeks were flushed. Her eyes, usually flat with exhaustion, were bright and wet at the corners. Clara stood a few steps away, relaxed in a way that made Ethan suspicious. Not careless, not arrogant, simply calm, as if she had been certain Lily would laugh. As if she had been waiting for the right moment to unlock something that didn't belong to her. Ethan cleared his throat. The sound came out rougher than he intended. "Thank you," he said, and hated how thin the words felt against what had just happened. Clara's smile didn't falter. "You're welcome." Lily hugged the button to her chest. Her laughter softened into a grin she seemed unsure she was allowed to keep. Then she looked up at Clara with a sudden urgency. "Will you be here tomorrow?" Lily asked. Clara's eyes warmed. "I work here every day, sweetie." Lily's shoulders loosened, as if the building had just promised her something important. Ethan noticed it and felt an unfamiliar tightness in his chest, sharp and immediate. His assistant appeared at his side like a shadow that knew its cue. Her face was still pale, her lips pressed into a line that was trying not to tremble. "Mr. Vance," she murmured. "Careful. The directors are waiting. The merger contracts." "Cancel," Ethan said, without looking away from Lily. The word landed like a dropped gavel. His assistant blinked. "Sir?" "Reschedule for tomorrow." He paused, then added quieter. "I'm with my daughter." That second sentence shocked him more than the first. He guided Lily back toward the elevators, her steps lighter than they had been in months. She kept glancing down at the button, then back at Clara, as if checking that both were real. On the ride up, Lily finally spoke again, voice small but excited. The dragon was funny. Ethan watched the numbers climb, but his focus kept slipping back to the lobby, the way Clara had crouched down, the way she had spoken as if Lily mattered more than the polished marble beneath their knees. "That was clever," Ethan said, choosing the safest word he could find. Lily nodded solemnly. It was magic. Ethan didn't argue. He didn't trust his own voice to handle it. In his office, the glass walls made everything look colder than it was. Ethan set Lily in the armchair by the window. She didn't reach for her coloring book. Instead, she sat with the button in her lap, tracing the edges of it with her thumb as if it could vanish if she let go. Ethan tried to return to his emails, the screen filled with numbers and clauses, tidy and obedient. But the memory of Lily's laugh kept cutting through the neat lines of text like a crack in glass. It had been too fast. Therapists, new toys, carefully planned trips, none of it had worked. And then a cleaner with a plastic button had done it in less than a minute. His mind, trained to find risks, began to search for one. When a meeting finally ended and the office quieted, Ethan reached for his phone and called a number he hadn't used in months. James Morrison answered on the second ring. His voice was smooth, unhurried. "Ethan, what can I do for you?" "I need a background check," Ethan said. He kept his tone neutral, as if he were requesting a standard report. "Basic information. Fast." A short pause. "On who?" "An employee. Clara Miller. Cleaning staff. Started last week." The silence on the line stretched just long enough to feel like judgment. "Any specific concern?" James asked. Ethan stared at the glass wall of his office. Beyond it, his building moved like a machine, perfect and cold. In the armchair, Lily sat quietly, still touching the button like prayer beads. "No," Ethan said, and the lie tasted like metal. "I just want to know what I'm dealing with." "I'll need time," James replied. 2 days, Ethan said, then corrected himself with a sharp exhale. 48 hours. Maximum. "I'll do what I can," James said. "Anything you want me to focus on?" Ethan hesitated. He thought of Clara's ease, the way people had gravitated toward her, the way Lily's eyes had followed her like she was sunlight. "Finances," Ethan said finally. "Background. Anything that explains why she's here." James didn't ask what he meant. Understood. Ethan ended the call and sat back, frustrated with himself. He should have felt relief. He should have felt grateful. Instead, he felt the urge to secure the variables. Lily slid off the armchair and patted closer, the carpet swallowing the sound of her steps. She stopped beside his desk and held up the button. "Can I keep it?" she asked. Ethan looked at the cheap plastic. In his world, objects like that were disposable. A trinket, a toy. In Lily's hands, it looked like proof that she could still be reached. "If Clara lets you," he said. Lily's smile flickered back on, small and careful, like something newly learned. "She will." Ethan's gaze followed her as she returned to the chair. He watched her shoulders settle, her breath even out, her eyes drifting toward the window instead of folding inward. His phone vibrated once on the desk, a silent reminder of business he had postponed. For the first time in a long time, Ethan didn't pick it up right away. He looked at his daughter and realized the most unsettling part wasn't that a stranger had made Lily laugh. It was that, in a single afternoon, Ethan could already feel how much he didn't want to lose that stranger. Morning brought a new kind of urgency. Lily appeared in the kitchen dressed before anyone had called her down. Backpack strapped on tight as if she were headed somewhere important. Her hair was brushed neatly. Her eyes were awake. "I'm going with you today," she announced. Ethan froze with his coffee halfway to his mouth. The cup clinked softly against the saucer when he set it down. "You have tutoring," he said, defaulting to routine. "Mrs. Helen is coming." "I can do it later," Lily replied, adjusting her straps with a seriousness that didn't belong to 6-year-old shoulders. "I want to help Clara." The name landed in the room like a small bell. "Mrs." Gable pretended not to listen, but Ethan saw her glance flicker up from the counter. "Help how?" Ethan asked. Lily's face brightened. "I can hold the cloths, and I can tell her stories, too." Ethan stared at her. For months, she had barely spoken to the staff, barely responded to him. Now she was offering help as if that were the most natural thing in the world. "All right," Ethan said slowly, "but you stay out of the way." "I promise," Lily said, and the smile that followed was real. Not a twitch, not a polite mask. A true lift of her cheeks that made Ethan's chest tighten. In the car, Lily talked the entire drive. The plastic button sat in her lap like an honorary badge. She recounted the princess, the dragon, the colors returning, adding details she hadn't mentioned before as if her imagination had been waiting for permission to breathe. Ethan listened with one ear, but he couldn't ignore the sound of her voice, steady, eager, alive. The city passed in a blur of glass and traffic while Lily filled the space with words. When they reached the building, Lily practically hopped out. In the elevator, she bounced on her toes, eyes fixed on the floor numbers. "Do you think she's here already?" she asked. "The cleaning staff starts early," Ethan said. "Can we go see her right away?" "After I check a few things," Ethan replied, and Lily's mouth dipped into a brief pout before she forced herself to nod. In his office, Lily didn't touch her coloring book. She stood by the window, watching the street below as if waiting for a signal. Ethan opened his laptop, tried to focus on a stack of emails, but the rhythm of his daughter's impatience filled the room. She shifted from foot to foot. She pressed her forehead lightly against the glass and pulled away. After 15 minutes, she turned, unable to hold it anymore. "Can we go now?" Ethan looked at her eyes, bright, pleading, and unfamiliar in their openness. He closed his laptop with a soft thud. "Fine," he said. "I'm coming with you." The 20th floor smelled like diluted lemon cleaner and warm printer ink. The air was cooler here, the kind of cool that flattened emotion. A security door beeped as someone swiped through. Somewhere, a cartwheel squeaked once and stopped. Clara was there, organizing bottles and cloths on her cart with quick, efficient movements. When she looked up and saw Lily, her face lit instantly, as if the morning had been waiting for that exact moment. "Hi, sweetie," Clara said. "Did you come to help me today?" "I did." Lily ran to her, stopping short only because she remembered she was supposed to be polite. "I brought stories." Clara's eyes softened. "I'd love to hear them." Ethan stayed near the reception desk, pulling a folder from his briefcase as a prop. He could have walked away. He could have trusted the moment. Instead, he stood close enough to see and far enough to pretend he wasn't watching. Lily followed Clara as she worked, careful not to step in wet patches. Clara handed her a dry cloth, and Lily held it with both hands as if it were important equipment. "This is a very serious job," Clara told her solemnly. Lily nodded gravely. "I know." Clara wiped down a glass panel. The cloth hissed softly. "Tell me your story." Lily took a breath, and for a second, Ethan expected the words to stall. Instead, they came out in a steady stream. "There's a princess," Lily began, "but she's not in a cloud castle. She's in a quiet castle, and the dragon steals her songs." Clara paused mid-wipe, not freezing, just slowing, like she was making space. "What does the princess do?" Clara asked gently. Lily looked down at her shoes. "She hides." Ethan's throat tightened. He hadn't heard Lily describe herself so clearly without knowing she was doing it. Clara didn't rush in with reassurance. She simply nodded, as if hiding made sense. "And then?" Clara prompted. "And then someone gives her a button," Lily said, and her fingers touched the plastic in her pocket through the fabric. "Not magic, but it reminds her." "Reminds her of what?" Clara asked. "That colors still exist," Lily whispered. Clara's voice stayed warm, steady. "That's a good reminder." They moved down the hallway together. Clara cleaned, Lily followed, talking about school, about art class, about a book she had stopped reading when it reminded her of bedtime. Her words stumbled once when she mentioned her mother, but Clara didn't flinch. "What was she like?" Clara asked, soft and simple. Lily's mouth trembled. "She sang to me." Clara set her cloth down on the cart. "Do you remember any of the song?" Ethan straightened, the folder in his hand suddenly too heavy. Lily hesitated. Her gaze drifted to the floor tiles as if the pattern could give her courage. Then she hummed just a few notes at first, fragile and thin. "Ah!" The sound threaded through the hallway like a ribbon of light. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't loud. But it was unmistakably Lily. Clara didn't clap or cheer. She only listened with full attention, eyes glistening at the corners. When Lily finished, Clara smiled as if Lily had handed her something precious. "That's beautiful," Clara said. "Your mom must have been so proud." Lily swallowed. "Do you think she can hear me?" Clara answered without hesitating. "Mothers hear their children, no matter where they are." Lily's shoulders eased, the tension slipping out of them as if that sentence had loosened a knot tied too tight. Ethan felt something shift behind his ribs, pain and relief braided together. He had tried therapy appointments and expert advice. He hadn't tried simply giving Lily permission to speak her grief aloud. Lily hummed again, a little louder. The notes hung in the air, and Ethan realized his own eyes had gone hot. He turned his face slightly toward the window, pretending to check the view, but he wasn't seeing the city. He was seeing the small, almost invisible bridge Clara had built between Lily's silence and her voice. And he couldn't tell which frightened him more: how easily Clara built it, or how quickly Ethan already depended on it being there. Ethan started finding reasons to be on the 20th floor. A security upgrade needed a second look. A vendor's badge policy required a quick check. A report had been misfiled. Each excuse sounded reasonable in his head, and none of them fooled him. He drifted back the way a compass needle drifts toward north. Every time he arrived, the same scene met him. Clara, working with steady hands, Lily orbiting her with growing confidence, their voices weaving together like a quiet thread through the corporate hum. The marble still shone. The glass still reflected. But the air felt less sterile in the small space around them. Ethan hated that it worked. He also couldn't stop watching. That evening, after Lily fell asleep in the back seat on the drive home, Ethan stared at the city lights and felt the old reflex tighten inside him. Control the variables, remove the unknown, protect what matters. When he reached his office, he didn't turn on the overhead lights. The desk lamp cast a narrow circle of warmth on polished wood. He picked up his phone and called James Morrison again. James answered with his usual calm. "I'm moving on it. I need it sooner," Ethan said. "You'll have it in 2 days," James replied. "I've already pulled employment history. I'm talking to people who know her." Ethan stared at the reflection of his own face in the dark window. "Focus on finances," he said. "Anything that explains why she's like that." James didn't ask what "like that" meant. Understood. When the call ended, Ethan sat in silence with the faint buzz of electronics and the soft tick of a clock he had never noticed before. The report came the next afternoon. James didn't waste words. Clara Miller, 28, single, lives alone in a small apartment in the Millfield district. Ethan's grip tightened around the phone. "Continue. Cleaning work for 3 years. Different companies. Before that, waitress, retail, receptionist. Nothing unusual in her record. No arrests, no lawsuits. Ethan exhaled slowly, irritated by his own relief. Financial situation is messy, James went on. Overdue bills, credit card debt, a few installment payments. She's behind, but not because she's living large. No car, no expensive purchases. Her place is simple, almost empty. Ethan frowned. Then where's the money going? That's the part I can't verify, James admitted. Neighbors say she's private about it. Ethan felt his jaw tighten. Neighbors? Yes, James said. And here's what's interesting. People in her building know her as the one who helps. Ethan's gaze drifted to the hallway outside his office, where the house was quiet and too clean. Explain. She waters plants when people travel, James said. Brings food when someone's sick. Helps elderly residents carry groceries. One neighbor told me Clara has lent her money more than once, even when she's struggling herself. Ethan's mind snagged on that. It didn't fit the pattern he expected. Debt usually came with something. Addiction, vanity, bad choices. Clara's debt came with generosity. That makes no sense, Ethan muttered. It doesn't, James agreed. And one more thing. Her work references are consistent. Managers call her reliable, polite, calm, good with people, nothing that screams con. Ethan stared at the wall as if it might offer a missing piece. Any family information? Not much, James said. No spouse, no child, no local relatives that I can confirm. And the debt reason? I couldn't pull the source, James said. It's like the money disappears for a reason she doesn't advertise. Ethan ended the call with a short thank you that sounded more like a dismissal. The report should have eased him. Instead, it made him more uneasy. A person who struggled but still gave. A person who asked for nothing. A person who made his daughter sing again. That combination made Ethan feel exposed, as if someone had found the one flaw money couldn't patch. Later that afternoon, he went down to the 20th floor to pick Lily up. He found them sitting on the marble near a sunlit window, surrounded by scraps of colored paper. The scent of cleaning solution mixed with the dry, papery smell of folded crafts. Lily held up a crooked yellow rose made from paper. Daddy, look. It's very nice, Ethan said, and meant it more than he expected. The flower was imperfect, but it had been made with care. It looked like effort turned into something that could be held. Clara smiled quietly, hands dusted with tiny paper fibers. Her fingers are quick, she said. She learns fast. Lily's cheeks puffed with pride. Clara taught me. Clara lifted another folded flower, smoothing a crease with her thumb. My mom taught me when I was little. Ethan's eyes sharpened. The word landed too cleanly, too quickly, like a door that had opened and closed in the same second. And where is your mother now? Ethan asked, keeping his tone casual, as if he were asking about the weather. Clara's smile faltered just a fraction. So brief most people wouldn't register it. But Ethan did. He lived for fractions. She's not here anymore, Clara said. The air around them shifted. Lily glanced between their faces, sensing the wrongness. I'm sorry, Ethan said, and the words felt insufficient. Thank you, Clara replied. Her voice stayed steady, but something in her eyes tightened, like pain pulled thin and tucked away. Lily grabbed the paper rose and stood. Can I give this to Margaret? She asked quickly. She was nice today. Of course, Ethan said. As they rode the elevator back up, Lily chattered about which colors they would try tomorrow, pink swans, blue flowers, maybe a butterfly. Ethan nodded at the right moments, but his mind stayed on Clara's face when he had asked about her mother. There had been sadness, yes, but there had also been something else, an edge of guilt or responsibility, or a weight that didn't belong to a simple answer. That night, Ethan sat in the dark of his office with the report open on his desk, the pages smelling faintly of fresh ink. Money disappears, James had said. Ethan hated incomplete puzzles. And yet, as he listened to Lily humming softly down the hall before bed, one truth sat heavier than all the missing pieces. Whatever Clara was hiding, she wasn't poisoning his daughter. She was bringing her back. The question that kept Ethan awake wasn't whether Clara could be trusted. It was what it would cost if she ever left. By Friday afternoon, Ethan was no longer pretending the decision hadn't already been made. Lily rode home with the paper rose in her lap like it was something alive. She talked the entire drive about what Clara had promised to teach her next paper flowers that didn't droop, a swan with wings that could actually lift, a butterfly that looked like it might fly if you breathed on it wrong. Every few sentences, she added Clara's name again, like punctuation, like proof. Ethan's hands stayed steady on the wheel, but his mind ran through risks the way it always did. Proximity, boundaries, optics. The words sounded reasonable until he imagined Lily's face when he told her she couldn't see Clara anymore. Then, the list collapsed into one unbearable outcome: silence returning. That night, Ethan stood outside Lily's bedroom door and listened to her hum as she changed into pajamas. The sound was thin but steady, a fragile thread that could snap if he pulled too hard. He made the call the next morning. "Send the driver to Millfield," Ethan told Margaret. "Pick up Clara Miller's things. Today." Margaret paused long enough for Ethan to hear her confusion in the silence. "Sir, her things?" "She's moving in," Ethan said, keeping his tone flat as if he were confirming a scheduled meeting. "Temporary." "Yes, Mr. Vance," Margaret replied carefully, as though she were filing away questions she didn't dare ask. Lily insisted on going. Ethan should have said no. He should have kept it simple, controlled. But Lily stood in the foyer with shoes already on, hair tied back, eyes bright with purpose. "I want to help," she said. So they went. Millfield was a different world from Ethan's. The apartment building was narrow, older, with paint worn thin around the doorframes. The hallway smelled like detergent and fried onions and something stale that had seeped into the carpet over years. A neighbor's television murmured through a wall. When Clara opened her door, she froze at the sight of Lily. "Sweetie," Clara said, startled warmth breaking through her surprise. "What are you doing here?" Lily rushed forward and hugged her. Clara's arms wrapped around her without hesitation, as if her body understood before her mind could catch up. Ethan stood behind them, uncomfortable with how natural it looked. "We came to help you pack," Lily announced. Clara pulled back gently. Her gaze lifted to Ethan, cautious now. "Mr. Vance, I meant what I said," Ethan replied. He kept his voice calm. "We have room. Lily wants you close, and I know you're dealing with difficulties." Clara's cheeks flushed, a quick heat that didn't look like gratitude so much as embarrassment. "It's not charity," Ethan added, sharper than he intended. He softened his tone. "It's practical. You make a difference for her." Clara looked past him, into the hallway, as if expecting someone to appear and explain this. No one did. It was just the three of them, and the stale carpet, and the quiet hum of someone else's life. Her apartment was small and almost bare. A sofa with a thin throw, a table with two mismatched chairs, a few books stacked neatly, no photos on the walls, no decorative clutter. It looked like a place designed for leaving. Ethan's driver carried down boxes that were shockingly few. Lily grabbed a small bag and struggled with it proudly, dragging it toward the elevator as if she were moving an entire house on her own. Clara watched Lily with something in her expression that Ethan couldn't name. Tenderness, yes, but also restraint, like someone forcing herself not to lean too far into something she couldn't afford to want. When they arrived at the mansion, the contrast hit like a temperature drop. The house rose behind iron gates and trimmed hedges, perfectly symmetrical, clean to the point of lifeless. Inside, polished floors reflected light without warmth. Furniture sat in precise arrangements like it was waiting for inspection. The air smelled faintly of wood polish and quiet. Clara stopped in the entryway. Her eyes traveled upward, taking in the high ceiling, the framed art, the staircase that curved like a performance. "It's a beautiful house," she said politely. Ethan heard the second sentence. She didn't say, "It doesn't feel like anyone lives here." Lily tugged Clara's hand. "Your room is next to mine." She dragged Clara down the hall, her sneakers squeaking softly on the shine. Ethan followed, watching Clara's gaze flicker from room to room. She didn't look greedy. She looked careful, as if she didn't want to touch anything too expensive and leave fingerprints. The guest room Ethan had chosen was large, bright, with a view of the garden. The bed was made perfectly. The dresser was empty. The closet smelled of cedar. Clara set her small box down on the bed, then turned slowly, absorbing the space like someone entering a world that could swallow her. "It's perfect," she said. Her voice held gratitude, but her eyes looked almost wary, like perfection was a trap. Lily spun in a circle. "I'm going to show you everything. The library, the garden, the piano room." "The piano room?" Clara repeated, and her glance flicked to Ethan as if she'd found a door in him she might be able to open. Dinner that night was the first time Ethan saw how Clara moved when she wasn't working. She sat at the table without stiffness, but not with entitlement either. She asked Mrs. Gable where plates went. She offered to help carry dishes without being asked. She spoke to Lily as if Lily's stories were important, listening fully, responding with small questions that kept Lily talking. At one point, Lily looked down at her food and said quietly, "I used to play piano." Clara didn't push. "Do you miss it?" Lily's fingers curled around her fork. "I stopped after Mom." "I understand," Clara said softly. "Some things hurt because they hold memories." Ethan watched Lily's shoulders tense, then ease slightly when Clara didn't demand anything more. The next morning, Ethan came down for breakfast and stopped in the doorway. Soft music played from somewhere low enough to be background, warm enough to shift the air. The kitchen window was cracked open, letting in fresh breeze. On the table sat a vase of flowers, simple ones, not extravagant, their scent faint but real. Clara stood beside Mrs. Gable, helping without taking over, humming under her breath. When she saw Ethan, she paused. "I hope you don't mind," she said, gesturing toward the music. "I can turn it off." Ethan should have minded. The house had always been quiet on purpose. But the sound made the space feel less like a museum. "It's fine," he said, and surprised himself by meaning it. That evening, Ethan walked down the hall and heard voices from Lily's room. The door was cracked open. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, telling Lily a story in a low, soothing tone. Lily's eyes were heavy, her fingers wrapped around the colorful button on her nightstand. Clara's voice softened as she reached the end. "And the little star stayed up all night," she whispered, "so the girl wouldn't feel alone." "Do you think Mom can see the star too?" Lily murmured. Clara didn't hesitate. "I think your mom sees every time you smile." Lily's lips curved, slow and sleepy. Her breathing deepened. Clara rose quietly and stepped into the hallway and nearly bumped into Ethan. She froze. Ethan froze. For a second, they stood there in the narrow corridor, the house holding its breath around them. "I didn't mean to," Clara started. "It's fine," Ethan said, his voice low. He glanced through the crack in the door. Lily lay curled under the blanket, face calm, mouth tilted in the smallest smile. Ethan looked back at Clara. "Thank you," he said. Clara's expression softened, then steadied again, like she was reminding herself not to take up too much space. "You're welcome," she whispered, and walked toward her room. Ethan stayed in the hallway, listening. The house was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet now, lighter, touched by music, by flowers, by a child sleeping with a smile. And for the first time in months, Ethan felt the unfamiliar fear that came with something fragile becoming precious, because warmth could return, which meant it could also be taken away. 2 weeks passed, and the house developed sounds Ethan didn't recognize at first. Not alarms, not phones, not the distant murmur of news from another room. Something softer, a small laugh in the hallway, a few notes of music drifting from a speaker, the rustle of paper being folded on the living room rug. Footsteps that didn't move like staff, quick, light, messy, alive. Ethan kept his routine anyway. Early coffee, long hours, meetings that stacked like bricks. He told himself the changes were for Lily, not for him. But every night when he came home, he felt the difference before he saw it. The air carried a faint scent of fresh flowers instead of polish. A window would be cracked open, letting in cool night air. And Lily would run toward him, not to ask permission, but to show him something. On Wednesday evening, a meeting canceled late. Ethan didn't fill the gap. He drove home. The living room lights were on low. Lily and Clara sat on the rug, puzzle pieces spread across the floor like scattered stained glass. A castle picture stared up from the box, ambitious and ridiculous. 1,000 pieces. "Hi, Daddy," Lily said without looking up. Her voice was calm, comfortable. "We're building a castle," she added, as if this explained everything. 1,000 pieces? Ethan asked, stepping closer. The carpet softened his footsteps, swallowing the usual sharpness. Clara glanced up with a smile that didn't ask for anything. "It's a big one," she said. "But Lily has patience." Lily picked up a piece, turned it once, then slid it into a spot Ethan would have sworn was impossible. It clicked into place with a neat little snap. "I remember where I saw this color before," Lily said, pleased. Ethan stared at the growing edge frame. "That's impressive." Lily looked up then, eyes bright. "Do you want to help?" The question landed in Ethan's chest like a weight with warmth inside it. He hadn't sat on a floor to play in years, not since before Lily's mother died, maybe not since before Lily was born. "I'm not good at puzzles," he said, instinctively reaching for an excuse. "That's okay," Lily replied immediately. "You can do the edges. They're easier." Clara's smile widened, as if Lily had just made an excellent business proposal. "She's a great project manager," Clara said. Ethan hesitated, then lowered himself onto the rug. His suit trousers creased in a way that would have bothered him in any other context. The carpet fibers pressed into his palm. Lily slid a small pile of straight-edged pieces toward him with the seriousness of handing over tools. "Corner first," Lily instructed. Ethan turned a blue piece in his fingers. The cardboard felt oddly satisfying, thin, textured, real. He tried it in one corner. It didn't fit. Lily didn't laugh. She leaned closer, studying it. "Maybe that one is the sky," she said. "Try the other corner." He tried again. This time, the piece slid in smoothly. A quiet click. Lily clapped once, delighted. "Good one!" Ethan felt something small ignite in him. A childish satisfaction he hadn't experienced in a long time, simple and honest. They worked in a rhythm that surprised him. Lily sorted colors and textures, quick and precise. Ethan scanned for patterns in edges and architecture, his mind slipping into focus the way it did in meetings, only gentler. A tower began to form, a courtyard. The outline of the castle rose piece by piece. Minutes blurred into an hour. At some point, Lily paused and looked at him with open curiosity. "Daddy," she said, "you're smiling." Ethan touched his face as if he couldn't trust it. His mouth really was curved upward, relaxed. "I guess I am," he admitted, and heard something in his own voice that felt unfamiliar lightness. "I knew it," Lily said, laughing softly. "Clara says everyone likes puzzles. They just need the right one." Clara didn't interrupt. She simply kept placing pieces, occasionally offering a quiet, "Try that cluster," or "That looks like a window." When Mrs. Gable called them for dinner, Ethan looked up as if waking from something. Dinner tasted different when he wasn't rushing through it. Lily talked excitedly about the main tower, about how Ethan found edge pieces faster than she expected. She counted his good finds like they were trophies. Clara listened, adding small questions that kept Lily glowing. After dinner, Ethan didn't retreat to his office. He returned to the rug without being asked. They finished the tower just before Lily's bedtime. Lily placed the last piece with dramatic care, tongue slightly out in concentration. It clicked in. "Done," Lily breathed, then burst into laughter. "We did it!" Ethan felt a sharp, surprising pride. Not in the castle, in the fact that they had built something together. When Clara told Lily it was time to get ready for bed, Lily pouted. Ethan heard himself say, "We can continue tomorrow." Lily's eyes widened. "Promise?" "Promise," Ethan said, and meant it. Upstairs, Lily kissed his cheek quickly before her bath, a routine gesture that suddenly felt like a gift he had been too numb to notice. Ethan stood in the hallway for a moment, the warmth of it lingering on his skin. Back downstairs, Clara began sorting pieces into piles by color. "You don't have to do that," Ethan said. "I don't mind," Clara replied. "It makes tomorrow easier." They worked in comfortable silence. The only sounds were cardboard sliding, the soft rustle of pieces, and the distant tick of a clock. After a few minutes, Ethan spoke without looking up. "Thank you." Clara's hand stilled. "For what?" "For including me," Ethan said, his voice quieter than usual. "I haven't done this in a long time." Clara studied him for a second, then nodded once, simple and kind. "It's never too late," she said. Ethan swallowed. "I always thought I was the provider. Lily's mom. She was everything else." Clara's gaze softened. "And now you're everything," she said gently. but you don't have to do it alone. Lily needs you in different ways. She needs you present. Ethan's chest tightened again, the same place that always felt stiff when he tried to breathe too deeply. How do you know so much about kids? He asked. You don't have any. Clara's smile flickered, turning sad for a heartbeat. I've taken care of many children, she said. And everyone was a child once. You remember what helped? You remember what didn't. There was something behind her words, a weight she didn't place on the table. Ethan didn't press. He returned to sorting pieces, letting her privacy stay intact. The next morning, Ethan woke to the soft sound of movement downstairs. He found Lily already on the rug, pieces spread out neatly. She had sorted the green garden pieces into a careful pile. Her hair was still messy, pajamas slightly wrinkled, but her posture was purposeful. You took so long, Lily teased, and the teasing itself felt like a miracle. Ethan sank onto the rug beside her without hesitation. They built the castle garden before breakfast. Lily matched flowers and hedges by color. Ethan found stone paths and small windows hidden in shadows. The house around them held its breath differently now, not empty, but waiting for them. During breakfast, Lily suggested a board game for the evening. If I don't get home too late, Ethan said, automatically. Lily's eyes lifted, hopeful. Can you try to come home earlier? Ethan looked at her, really looked, and felt the sting of how rarely he had been asked that. I'll try, he said, and for the first time in years he meant it like a promise, not a polite answer. It was a quiet Tuesday when the air in the house changed. Ethan came home earlier than usual, already picturing the unfinished puzzle waiting on the coffee table. The foyer was dim, the kind of dim that felt intentional now soft music usually lived in it, or Lily's footsteps, or Clara's humming from the kitchen. Today, there was only the faint whir of the refrigerator and the distant tick of a clock. Clara stood in the living room with a bundle of fresh flowers in her hands, trimming stems over the sink. Water ran in a thin stream, the scent of greenery mixed with the clean soap on her fingers. For a moment, she looked perfectly calm, centered in the ritual. Then her phone rang. The sound was sharp in the quiet, a vibration that skated across the counter before she caught it. Clara glanced at the screen and answered immediately. Hello? Her voice began bright out of habit. It lasted less than a second. What? Clara's hand tightened around the phone. When did that happen? Ethan paused in the kitchen doorway, a glass of water halfway filled in his hand. The faucet hissed softly into the glass. He stopped it, and the sudden silence made her words stand out. Okay, calm down, Clara said, breath quickening. I'll see what I can do. A long pause, her gaze fixed on nothing. No, she whispered. I don't have it right now. You know I send everything I can, Her voice broke, caught on the edge of a sob. I'll figure it out, I promise. Ethan's fingers tightened around the glass. The cold pressed into his palm. Clara listened again, swallowing hard. How? Soon? She asked, almost pleading. I'll try to get there, as soon as I can. She ended the call and sat down on the sofa like her legs had forgotten how to hold her. Her shoulders shook once, then again. She covered her face with both hands, trying to keep the sound of crying small, contained, private. Ethan stood frozen for a beat. He didn't like stepping into people's pain. Pain was messy, unpredictable. It didn't respond to money the way contracts did. But Clara had been the one steady presence holding his daughter together. Seeing her like this made something in him shift from caution to urgency. He walked into the living room. Clara, he said gently. She flinched, then looked up fast, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. Her eyes were red. Her breathing was uneven. I'm sorry, she whispered. Mr. Vance, I didn't mean to. It didn't sound like nothing, Ethan said. He kept his voice low, careful. What happened? Clara pressed her lips together, fighting the impulse to shut down. For a moment, she looked like she might lie. Then her chin trembled. It's my mom, she said. The words came out thin. She's in the hospital. It got worse. Ethan's chest tightened in a quiet, immediate way. The missing piece from James's report clicked into place so neatly it felt cruel. Is it serious? He asked. Clara nodded, eyes shining. They say she needs surgery. Urgent. And she swallowed hard. I can't afford it. I already owe so much they're reluctant to do more. Ethan sat beside her, the couch dipping slightly under his weight. The house felt too large around them, too quiet, as if it were listening. How long has she been sick? He asked. 2 years, Clara said. They didn't know what it was at first. Tests, appointments, waiting. When they finally diagnosed it, she rubbed her forehead with trembling fingers. It's rare. Treatment is expensive. I'm all she has. Ethan exhaled slowly, his mind running numbers automatically. 15,000. 20. More. In his world, those figures were background noise. In hers, they were a wall. And you've been paying for everything, he said. Clara nodded again, shame flickering across her face. I didn't want anyone to know. You already did so much. The house, the stability. You didn't ask, Ethan said, firm. I'm asking now. How much for the surgery? Clara shook her head immediately. No, I can't. Clara, Ethan's voice sharpened just enough to cut through her refusal. How much? She hesitated, then whispered it like confession. 15,000, just for the surgery, not counting recovery, medication. Ethan didn't blink. Done. Clara's breath hitched. Mr. Vance, no, I can't owe you that. Then don't, he said. It's not a loan. Her eyes widened, panic and gratitude colliding. This is too much. Ethan's jaw tightened. You brought my daughter back, he said, and the truth in his own voice surprised him. That number doesn't even begin to cover what you did. Clara's tears returned, spilling freely now that she had permission not to hold them back. I need to be there, she whispered. During the surgery. She's alone. Where? Ethan asked. Chicago, Clara said. It's where I grew up. She's there. Ethan glanced at the clock on the wall. 3 in the afternoon. When? He asked. There's a flight at 8, Clara said. If I can get a ticket. Surgery is tomorrow morning. Ethan stood, already reaching for his phone. I'll have it arranged. Clara grabbed his sleeve lightly, reflexive. Please don't. I can't keep taking. Ethan looked down at her hand on his cuff. It was small, uncertain. The same hand that folded paper into swans for Lily. The same hand that held the house together with flowers and music. This isn't taking, he said quietly. This is right. His phone connected. Margaret, he said, voice clipped. I need a ticket to Chicago tonight. Immediate. As he spoke, the front door opened. Lily's voice echoed down the hall, bright and rushing. Clara, I have to tell you. She ran into the living room and stopped hard when she saw Clara's face. The joy drained from Lily's features in a single breath. Clara, Lily whispered. Are you crying? Clara opened her arms, trying to smile through trembling lips. Sweetie, I have to go on a trip. Lily's eyes widened. A trip? My mom is sick, Clara said softly. I need to take care of her. For how long? Lily asked, voice shrinking as if the words were too heavy to say. Clara hesitated. Ethan saw it the truth she couldn't promise away. Maybe a week, Clara said carefully. Maybe more. Lily's face crumpled. More? Clara reached for her, but Lily stepped forward first and latched onto her waist, clinging with desperate strength. Don't go, Lily sobbed into her shirt. You can't leave. I need you here. Clara's eyes squeezed shut. Her arms wrapped around Lily as if she could physically hold her together. Lily's voice broke. I already lost my mom. I can't lose you, too. Ethan stood nearby, phone still in his hand. The call with Margaret ended without him remembering when he'd pressed the button. The house felt suddenly enormous again, swallowing sound, swallowing warmth. Clara looked over Lily's head at Ethan, helpless grief in her eyes. Ethan understood the fear now, not as a concept, but as a living thing in the room. In a few hours, Clara would be gone, and the silence would come back for its place. The first day without Clara felt like the house had been turned off. Ethan came downstairs expecting, without admitting it, some trace of motion, some soft sound threaded through the silence. There was none. No low music. No hum of someone moving between rooms, just the refrigerator cycling on and off and the clock ticking loud enough to feel like a reprimand. Mrs. Gable placed breakfast on the table with quiet efficiency. The plates landed with a muted clink that echoed longer than it should have. The vase on the center of the table sat empty. Ethan noticed it and felt an absurd irritation at himself for noticing. Lily arrived in the doorway already dressed for school, but her posture looked smaller. Her eyes were swollen, lashes stuck together in places as if she'd cried until sleep finally won. "Good morning, sweetie," Ethan said, keeping his voice gentle. "Morning," Lily murmured, sliding into her chair without looking up. "What do you want today?" Ethan asked. Lily stared at her plate. "I'm not hungry." Ethan's jaw tightened. He had learned, quickly, that Lily's appetite had been a barometer for her spirit. The child who had once eaten in silence now left food untouched like a statement. "You need something," Ethan said, trying to sound like a father and not a CEO negotiating. "Just a little." Lily picked up a piece of toast and took a single bite, chewing with the slow resignation of someone doing a chore. Her juice sat untouched, bright orange and pointless. The ride to school was quiet. Lily pressed her forehead against the window, watching the city slide past. Ethan kept glancing at her reflection, searching for an opening, a question, anything he could answer. She gave him nothing. At the office, Ethan moved through meetings on autopilot. Words floated around him, deadlines, approvals, projections, and he nodded at the right moments, signed where he was supposed to sign. His mind kept snapping back to the living room rug, the puzzle pieces waiting like a half-built world. At noon, his phone buzzed. A message. "Surgery went well. My mother is stable. Thank you for everything." Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Relief spread through him first, then something sharper. The message ended there. No return date, no reassurance. Just the fact of stability and a polite thank you. He stared at the screen for a moment too long before locking it and slipping it back into his pocket. When he got home that evening, the living room looked the same, but it felt wrong. The puzzle box sat on the coffee table. The pieces were still sorted in small piles the way Clara had left them. The air smelled faintly of old flowers, not fresh ones, something left over and fading. Lily sat on the sofa, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the puzzle as if it had betrayed her. "Want to continue?" Ethan asked, trying to make his voice sound casual. Lily didn't look at him. "It's not the same," she said. "We can try," Ethan replied, lowering himself onto the rug. The carpet felt rougher than he remembered. "Maybe it'll still be fun." "It won't be," Lily said quietly. Still, she slid down from the couch and sat opposite him. She picked up a piece, turned it once, then set it down again as if her fingers had forgotten how to do the work. Ethan tried to find an edge piece. The image on the box mocked him with its perfect castle. He fit one piece into place. It clicked, too loud in the silence. Lily sighed, long and heavy, and the sound made Ethan's stomach knot. After 15 minutes, Lily pushed away from the rug. "Can I go to bed early?" Ethan looked up, surprised by how quickly he wanted to agree just to stop watching her struggle. "Of course," he said. Upstairs, Lily lay in bed with the covers pulled tight to her chin. Ethan hovered in the doorway, unsure of the script. He had learned to rely on Clara's rhythm story, soft voice, gentle certainty without acknowledging that he had done it. Lily's eyes stared at the ceiling. "I can't sleep," she whispered. Ethan stepped closer. "Do you want me to tell you a story?" Lily turned her head toward him, hope flickering like a candle fighting wind. "Yes," she said softly. "Clara always made them up." Ethan sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped under him. He cleared his throat and started with the first childhood story that came to mind. Something familiar, something safe. His voice sounded flat to his own ears. He tried to make it animated, tried to add different tones, but the words fell into the room like stones instead of lights. After a few minutes, Lily's expression softened into polite patience. Not joy, not magic, just endurance. "That's okay, Daddy," she said gently, as if she were trying to protect his feelings. "Thank you." The sentence hurt more than if she'd cried. Ethan stopped. He smoothed her hair with awkward care. Her forehead was warm. Her body was tense beneath the blanket. "I'll try again tomorrow," he said. Lily nodded, but her eyes slid away, back to the ceiling. Downstairs, Ethan paused by the dining table. The empty vase stood in the center like an accusation. He opened a cabinet and saw a stack of clean glass vases Clara had arranged by size, neat and ready. He closed the door again without taking one out. On the second day, the last bouquet Clara had left began to wilt in the corner. Petals browned at the edges. The water turned cloudy. The house smelled faintly of decay under the polish. Lily barely ate dinner. When Ethan suggested a movie, she shook her head and disappeared upstairs early, leaving the staircase quiet behind her. On the third day, Ethan realized the damage wasn't only Lily's. He missed the soft music. He missed the simple, warm interruptions. He missed the way Clara made him feel less like a visitor in his own home. He missed her presence the way someone misses light only after it's gone. Do you notice how much you depended on it to see? That night, he sat alone at the kitchen counter, the overhead lights off. His phone lay on the wood beside his hand. He picked it up. Clara answered on the third ring. Her voice was tired, thin with strain. "Hello?" "Clara," Ethan said quietly. "It's Ethan." A small exhale on her end, relief and weariness mingled. "How's Lily?" Ethan stared at the dark window above the sink. The reflection of the kitchen looked like a room in an empty hotel. "She misses you," he said, too blunt to soften it. "She's barely eating." Silence. Then Clara's voice cracked. "I'm sorry." "It's not about sorry," Ethan replied. His fingers tightened around the phone. "How is your mother?" "She's stable," Clara said. "But recovery is slow. Physical therapy for months. The doctors think." She hesitated. "They think I may need to stay here longer than I planned." Ethan felt the words hit him in the chest like a door closing. "How long?" he asked, though he already knew there wouldn't be a clean answer. "I don't know," Clara whispered. Ethan's gaze drifted to the empty vase on the table again, the space where flowers should have been. He made the decision before he finished thinking it through. "Then bring her here," he said. Clara went silent. Ethan continued, voice steady, as if he were offering a simple solution to a complex problem. "Bring your mother to recover in my house. I have the space. I can hire nurses, therapy, everything. You won't have to choose between her and—" He stopped himself before he said Lily. On the other end, Clara's breath hitched. "Mr. Vance, I can't accept that." "Yes, you can," Ethan said, and surprised himself with the firmness. "Because Lily needs you back." A pause. Then Ethan added the truth he hadn't planned to say out loud. "And I do too." The line went very quiet. When Clara finally spoke, her voice was almost a whisper. "Let me talk to her," she said. "My mom, she doesn't like help." "Tell her it's temporary," Ethan replied. "Tell her it's for her recovery. Tell her—" He swallowed. "Tell her she's welcome." Clara exhaled, shaky. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan ended the call and sat in the dark kitchen, the phone still warm in his hand. For the first time since Clara left, the silence didn't feel like a verdict. It felt like a pause before something returned. 2 days later, Ethan stood at the arrivals gate with Lily vibrating beside him. The airport smelled like coffee and jet fuel and disinfectant. Wheels rattled over tile. An overhead announcement crackled and faded. Lily kept bouncing on the balls of her feet, fingers twisting the strap of her small backpack until it creaked. "Are you sure she's coming?" Lily asked for what felt like the 10th time. "I'm sure," Ethan said, though his own pulse argued otherwise. "And her mom?" Lily's eyes widened, full of anxious hope. "Do you think she'll like me?" Ethan glanced at Lily's face, so open now, so quick to feel. "I think she'll be grateful," he said carefully. A cluster of passengers spilled through the doors, faces blurred, then separated. Lily leaned forward like a sprinter waiting for the gun. Then she saw Clara. Clara moved slower than usual, her shoulders drawn tight with exhaustion, one hand gripping a worn bag. Her hair was pulled back, messy at the edges. But when her eyes found Lily, something in her face softened as if a knot untied. "Clara!" Lily shouted and ran. Clara dropped the bag without thinking and opened her arms. Lily collided into her, wrapping herself around Clara's waist so hard Clara rocked back a step. Clara's arms closed around Lily with fierce relief, her chin lowering to Lily's hair. She squeezed her eyes shut, as if she'd been holding herself together with a thin string, and this hug let her finally breathe. "I missed you," Lily cried into her coat. "I missed you too," Clara whispered, voice breaking. "So much." Ethan watched, a strange pressure behind his ribs. Relief came first. Then gratitude. Then a quieter feeling that sat deeper, something like belonging that scared him because it meant he could lose it. A few steps behind, Clara came an older woman, gray hair pulled back, a cane in her right hand. Her posture slightly stooped, but her gaze sharp. Her eyes were the same light blue as Clara's, only harder, less forgiving. She looked around the terminal with a mixture of embarrassment and suspicion, as if she expected someone to laugh at her for being here. Clara pulled back from Lily and touched the woman's arm gently. "Mom," she said, "this is Ethan Vance. And this is Lily." The woman's lips pressed together. Her gaze flicked over Ethan's coat, his watch, his controlled posture. Then it moved to Lily, and something in her expression shifted just slightly, like a door cracking open. "Mr. Vance," she said, formal and guarded. "I told Clara this wasn't necessary." "It is," Ethan replied. He stepped forward and held out his hand. "I'm Ethan." The woman hesitated, then took his hand briefly, her grip light but steady. "Rose," she said. "Rose Miller." "Welcome, Rose," Ethan said. Rose's shoulders tightened as if the word welcome made her uncomfortable. On the drive home, Lily sat in the back seat, pressed close to Clara. Talking so fast, the words tumbled over one another. She described the puzzle pieces waiting, the empty vases, the nights that felt too quiet. Her voice didn't accuse, it simply revealed the shape of what was missing. Clara listened with a tight, tender expression, nodding at the right moments, her hand resting on Lily's knee like an anchor. "I brought something," Clara said finally, digging into her bag. Lily's eyes widened. "For me?" "Close your eyes," Clara instructed. Lily squeezed them shut dramatically. Clara placed something small into her palms. "Okay," Clara said. "Open." A tiny golden bell lay in Lily's hands, delicate and shiny, catching the light from the car window. "It's a wishing bell," Clara said. "Every time you ring it, you can make a wish." Lily's mouth fell open. "Really?" "Really," Clara replied, and her smile flickered into place, tired but real. "But it only works for wishes that are good for other people." Lily held the bell carefully, as if it might break if she breathed wrong. Then she looked toward Rose in the front seat. "Then I wish your mom gets better," Lily said instantly. The bell barely moved in her hand, but the intention rang louder than any sound. Rose stared back at Lily in the rearview mirror, caught off guard. Her eyes shone briefly, then she looked away quickly, as if emotion was something she didn't know how to carry in public. When they arrived at the mansion, Rose paused at the doorway with the same stillness Clara had shown the first time. Her gaze swept over the high ceilings, the polished floors, the expensive quiet. She looked like someone stepping into a world that had never made room for her. Clara entered behind Lily, and her shoulders dropped slightly, a breath leaving her as if she'd been holding it since Chicago. She looked around the foyer and smiled faintly. Mrs. Gable appeared with a cautious expression that melted when she saw Clara. "Welcome back," she said softly. Clara's gaze immediately snapped to the empty vases in the hall. "The flowers," she murmured, almost to herself. Ethan heard the apology in her tone and felt a sting of it. "We didn't know which ones to choose," Ethan admitted, voice low. Clara's laugh came out unexpectedly, light and relieved, and it filled the foyer like sunlight through glass. "We lost your magic touch," she teased gently, then shook her head. "I'll get fresh flowers tomorrow." "No," Lily said, clutching the bell. "We'll go together. I want to pick some for your mom, too." Rose lowered herself carefully into an armchair, cane leaning against her knee. She watched Lily tug Clara toward the hallway, watched Clara let herself be pulled, watched Ethan stand there like a man who had forgotten how to live in a house with warmth and was learning again. For the first time, Rose's guarded expression softened into something close to awe. That night, after Rose had been settled into a room near the stairs and Lily had fallen asleep with the wishing bell on her nightstand, Ethan found Clara in the kitchen rinsing travel dust from her hands. She looked up, and her eyes filled immediately. Exhaustion sat beneath her face, but relief sat beside it. "Thank you," Clara whispered, voice shaking. "For my mom, for bringing us here." Ethan stood under the warm kitchen light and felt something in him settle into place. "You're part of this house," he said simply. The words came out steady, like a decision he could finally own. Clara's smile trembled into being. "Welcome back," Ethan added softly, as if the phrase meant more than arriving. Clara nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I'm here," she whispered. And for the first time in days, the house didn't feel like it was waiting for something to return. It felt like it had. 6 weeks later, the house no longer felt like it was being maintained. It felt lived in. Mornings carried the low clatter of breakfast plates and the soft shuffle of Rose's cane across wood floors. The living room rug had a permanent scatter of small things, now puzzle boxes stacked slightly crooked, a tin of colored paper. Lily's drawings fanned across the coffee table like announcements. The air smelled faintly of fresh flowers every few days, and something warm from the oven on weekends. Rose's recovery moved in measurable steps. A physical therapist arrived each afternoon, shoes squeaking lightly as she crossed the foyer. There was the steady cadence of counted reps, the small hiss of pain hidden behind pride, the quiet praise when Rose made it to the end of the hallway without stopping. Lily treated every milestone like a victory parade, ringing her tiny bell once for good wishes and then clapping like it was the only correct response. Ethan noticed everything now, not like a man inspecting assets, but like someone learning how to stay. On a Saturday morning, he woke without an alarm. The silence that used to greet him had changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It was layered, distant humming from the kitchen, a faint melody from a speaker, the soft tap of Lily's feet upstairs. He walked down in bare feet and paused at the kitchen doorway. Clara stood at the stove, hair loosely pinned back, wearing a simple light blue dress. Steam rose in thin ribbons from a pot. The scent of butter and something sweet hung in the air. She moved with a calm ease, the kind that made a room feel safe just by existing. She looked up and smiled. "Good morning." Ethan's throat tightened, but not with grief, with something gentler. "You're up early," Clara said. "I slept well," Ethan replied, surprised to hear it as truth. "Better than I have in years." Clara turned the heat down, eyes warm. "Do you want something special?" Ethan hesitated, then stepped fully into the kitchen as if crossing a line. "Actually, I was thinking of making breakfast today. For you and Lily." Clara blinked, caught off guard. Then her smile widened in quiet delight. "She's going to love that." Ethan opened the cabinet, pulling out flour, a bowl, a whisk. His hands, so used to signatures and screens, felt awkward around simple tools. Clara leaned against the counter, watching him with open amusement. "Need help?" "I think I've got it," Ethan said, but his voice betrayed nerves. Clara laughed softly, the sound warm like sunlight on tile. "I'll stay close, just in case." He measured ingredients with more care than any contract. Flour dusted his fingers. The batter smelled faintly of vanilla. When he poured the first pancake onto the pan, it sizzled instantly, a sound so domestic it almost made him dizzy. "You're doing great," Clara murmured. "I had a good teacher," Ethan replied, and their eyes met for a moment longer than necessary. Something quiet passed between them, recognition, gratitude, and a softness that had begun to grow its own roots. Lily came down in unicorn pajamas with hair sticking up in the back. She froze in the doorway, eyes wide. "Daddy," she whispered, as if she'd walked into a dream. "Are you cooking?" "I am," Ethan said, turning the pancake with careful concentration. "Special pancakes for you." Lily ran to him and hugged his waist. The smell of her shampoo and the warmth of her small body pressed into him, simple and grounding. "You're becoming like Clara," Lily declared proudly, "making yummy things for us." The comparison hit Ethan in a place that mattered. He didn't correct her. He didn't hide how much it pleased him. They ate together at the table while sunlight filled the kitchen. Rose appeared midway through, moving more steadily now, and Lily insisted she sit closest to the window. "You have to try Daddy's pancakes," Lily announced, sliding a plate toward her. Rose took a bite, then lifted her eyebrows in surprise. "Not bad," she admitted, the closest she came to praise without surrendering dignity. Clara smiled into her coffee, eyes shining. After breakfast, Ethan found himself asking, "Do you want me to come to the market with you?" Clara looked up, startled by how natural he sounded saying it. "Of course." At the market, Ethan pushed the cart while Clara chose tomatoes and herbs, explaining each one to Lily as if she were teaching her a secret language. The air smelled like citrus and bread. A cashier greeted Clara warmly, and Clara greeted her back by name. Lily held up a bunch of flowers and insisted Rose would like them. Ethan watched them, Clara and Lily, moving through a normal errand like a family, and felt a steady ache that wasn't painful. It was full. That afternoon, they cooked together. Ethan peeled potatoes. Clara chopped herbs. The knife, tapping against the cutting board, became a calm rhythm. The kitchen filled with the scent of rosemary and roasted meat, warmth climbing into the walls. "You've changed," Clara said softly while stirring a pot. Ethan paused, hands wet, and looked at her. "I was always running," he admitted. "Work to home, home to work. I thought if I kept moving, I wouldn't feel how empty everything was." Clara's expression softened. "And now?" "Now I want to be here," Ethan said, and the words surprised him by how simple they were. "With Lily, with you, with this." Clara's eyes shimmered. "Sarah would be proud," she whispered. For the first time, the name didn't slice him open. It settled like a memory placed gently on a shelf. Dinner that night felt like a celebration without anyone announcing it. Rose told a story about Clara as a child, stubborn and kind, sneaking extra bread to a neighbor. Lily laughed until she hiccuped. Ethan laughed, too genuine, unguarded. After Lily went to bed and Rose retired, Ethan and Clara stayed in the living room. The lamplight turned everything golden. Outside the windows, the garden sat quiet, holding the last warmth of the day. Clara tidied a stack of magazines. Ethan watched her hands, the ease in her movements, the way the room seemed to settle when she was in it. He stood up before fear could talk him out of it. "Clara," he said. She turned, sensing the weight in his voice. "Yes?" Ethan stepped closer. His palms felt slightly damp. His heartbeat sounded loud in his own ears. "I need to tell you something," he said, and the words came carefully, like he was placing something fragile on the table. "I thought I was done with love, with real connection." Clara didn't interrupt. She simply listened, eyes steady. "You came into our lives and changed everything," Ethan continued. "Not with money, not with control, with attention, with kindness, with the small things that make a home." Clara's lips parted, emotion rising. "Ethan, please," he said quietly, "let me finish." He took her hands. They were warm, slightly rough from work, real. "I made that promise once out of pride," Ethan said, voice shaking just enough to betray the truth. "This isn't that. This is me, choosing." He lowered himself to one knee on the rug where they had built puzzles together. The carpet fibers pressed into his suit. The moment felt absurd and perfect at the same time. Clara's breath caught. "Clara Miller," Ethan said, looking up at her. "Will you marry me? Not because I promised it in public, because I can't imagine our life without you." For a heartbeat, Clara looked like she might fall apart. Tears slid down her cheeks. Her smile trembled into being. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." Ethan rose and kissed her softly, a kiss that felt like relief. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Lily's sleepy voice floated down the hall. "Daddy?" Ethan and Clara froze, then laughed quietly, breathless. Lily appeared at the top of the stairs in pajamas, rubbing her eyes. She blinked at them, confused, then saw Clara's tears. "What happened?" Lily asked, suddenly wide awake. Clara knelt and opened her arms. "Sweetie," she whispered, voice thick. "Your dad asked me to marry him." Lily's mouth dropped open. Then her face lit so brightly it looked like the room itself warmed. "Really?" she squealed, launching herself into Clara's arms. "Does that mean you'll stay forever?" Clara held her gently. "If you'll have me," she said, "I'll never replace your mom, but I can love you always." Lily nodded fiercely, then looked up at the ceiling as if she could see through it. "Then I'll have a mom in heaven," she said, "and a mom here." Behind them, Rose stood in the hallway, cane in hand, eyes wet but smiling. She wiped at her cheek quickly, pretending it was nothing. Outside, the garden lay still under the night sky. One cloud drifted past the moon in the shape of a heart before thinning into darkness. Lily pointed through the window, voice reverent with certainty. "It's a sign." Ethan held Clara's hand, and for once, he didn't need to argue with hope. Love came back quietly. It stayed,